Okay, so we're just starting the live stream of the second lunar deboosting operation by Chandrayaan-3's lander. We've got a really good S-band signal on the central carrier. Just need to deal with a feedback issue. Found it. Okay, back where we started. Okay, so we're about 30 minutes out from the burn. ISRO has said it's going to occur at 0200 Indian Standard Time, which is 2030 UTC. Just taking a few seconds here. I'm still setting up. Okay, so things aren't incredibly exciting yet here. We just did a lunar Doppler reversal a few minutes before I started the live stream. So the rapidly descending carrier you're hearing now from Chandrayaan-3 lander is all normal. So hopefully the spacecraft attitude remains good throughout the pass, and we get a good strong signal like we're seeing right now. So yeah, so it stays nice and audible. And meanwhile, I'll slip this guy over, and we've got Chanadrayaan-2 on the other screen. So I don't have the audio up for it. If I bring it up, it'll just beep with the other. But you can see it's happily doing its thing. So let's keep an eye on our primary interest here. Am I a Ukrainian? No, but I have Ukrainian blood. A significant portion of my family came from there. Okay, so what are we seeing? Okay, so let's start off by understanding that the spacecraft has a radio transmitter. It's the only way it can communicate with Earth. The tone you're hearing right now is its central carrier and can be used for finding the spacecraft with your antenna, but you can also use the Doppler effect to allow you to determine its velocity, line of sight velocity to us. The Doppler effect is directly related to that. So from that, we get a sense of what the spacecraft is doing in space. So if it's orbiting something, it's going to have a periodic behavior that relates to the period of the orbit. So if you change the velocity of the spacecraft with some sort of acceleration, like doing a second deboost burn to lower your orbit, then you should see a change in the pitch than what you're expecting. So that's what we're looking for today. So we got about 30 minutes, and we'll just continue to track here and allow that to occur. I'll have to adjust periodically so you guys get the audio, and I'll take time to describe what's going on. So with respect to Luna 25, there's a lot of questions about it. Here's what we do know. The spacecraft was launched. U.S. Space Force did publish an orbital element for a final stage booster of the mission. From there, Luna 25, we were told by Roscosmos, entered a lunar injection, translunar injection orbit, and arrived at the moon some 4 or 5 days later, according to their information. After the U.S. Space Force data was published on the second stage, or the final stage booster, that was the last independent report that I've seen publicly anyways, of the Luna 25 mission. Roscosmos has released numerous reports since then of various mission milestones being achieved, including this morning's post where some sort of spacecraft emergency was declared. They say that the spacecraft did not perform a orbital deboost, much like Chanadrayaan-3's lander is supposed to do shortly, and from there, other information is very scant. A reliable source that reports on the Russian space program noted that one of the Russian discussion channels, apparently the signal from Luna 25 was lost. That could indicate something catastrophic. Typically, rocket engines malfunction in one of two ways. Either they don't do anything, or they do something that engages in some kind of rapid disassembly of the spacecraft. Hopefully that wasn't the case. We don't need a debris field around the moon. And, yeah. So that's what we know about Luna 25. I posted some information earlier about how, assuming the most positive failure mode, I'm just adjusting frequency here, of the mission, we could be seeing recovery efforts occurring once the moon rises over Russia again, over eastern Russia, where they do have ground controlling stations. Right now, since they don't have any international assets to really bring to bear that I'm aware of, they will have to wait until they have acquisition of signal again. When I say acquisition of signal, what I mean is the spacecraft is above the horizon of their nearest indigenous ground station. So from there, they've got time to attempt to, if they have a communication problem with Luna 25, to fix that, and then assuming they can get telemetry from the spacecraft and understand what it means and figure out a problem, maybe it's just a software issue or something like that, and then they can develop a fix. Given that they have a limited window of doing that of a few hours before they have to pass control off to Western Russia, they may have a limited amount of time to come up with a more complicated fix for the mission. From there, of course, they will eventually lose signal from the spacecraft, i.e. the spacecraft, the moon will set, and they will be unable to communicate with it again for another revolution of the Earth. And at that point, they're getting into when they were planning on landing. So really, they have one window left to really kind of sort out the problems, command a burn. But if the spacecraft is still healthy in some sort of safe mode, which can happen to a spacecraft when it detects an anomaly, if it's got a robust onboard error management system, the spacecraft might have noted that there was some sort of issue, shut everything down, and caused the spacecraft to reorientate to collect solar power and then eventually reorientate and communicate with Earth. That's what a lot of Western missions do if there's issues. So I would assume the Russian design has something similar. So until we get some more information from Russia, we're really out of options. I haven't seen any signals from Luna 25 this morning on C-band or X-band. I have been tracking the mission continuously since launch and have yet to hear anything from it, which, as people that have followed me for a long time probably realize, that's highly unusual. Usually someone in the world will detect something from something moonward bound. So it's highly unusual that no one independently has confirmed whether Luna 25 is really doing anything anywhere near the moon. So, not to say that it isn't, but we just don't have independent confirmation. So, back to the situation at hand, because I think that probably handily describes what's going on with Luna 25, and everybody's got access to Twitter, can have a look at my tweets about it, and those that I've linked to that have provided information. So, until we get an update, there's not much more to talk about. So meanwhile, Chanadrayaan-2 and 3 and the propulsion module are all kind of in the same lunar orbital plane. I think Chandrayaan-2 and the propulsion module are largely in the same orbital plane. Chandrayaan-2, I believe, is in a circular orbit around 100 kilometers above the moon. The propulsion module is in a slightly higher, a little bit more elliptical orbit. And then, of course, Chandrayaan-3 lander is in a much more elliptical orbit and will become even more elliptical shortly when it fires the rocket to lower its paraloon. So this is a normal procedure. Getting ready to land on the moon is a kind of a step change in lunar altitude until they get to essentially the paraloon that they want, where they can essentially stop the spacecraft from orbiting the moon and then drop out of orbit and descend down towards the landing site. So we're getting pretty close to that with Chandrayaan-3 as we slowly step down in altitude and maintain a stable orbit of the moon. So hopefully in about 20 minutes we'll start to see evidence of the burn, and shortly thereafter, if ISRO keeps up with its public relations that they've been doing rather well throughout the mission, we'll get an update from them about the new apoloon and paraloon of the spacecraft and the results of the burn. So somebody asked, why is there a spike at AOS, or acquisition of signal? Well, that spike is just the signal arriving over the noise. So before that, it's just thermal noise, either of the ground or my trees. And then when the spacecraft clears that and I get line of sight, then you get the signal coming up. Now, if you look at the Doppler plot, or the frequency plot, so this is frequency on this axis. You can see it labeled here. This is the frequency in megahertz. This is up here is the signal intensity. So the spike that you're seeing is approximately 20 dB over the noise, a little bit more. So that's quite loud. Creates a nice clear carrier that, you know, is easy to distinguish. When you start getting below 10 dB, you need a kind of an experienced ear to hear stuff properly. But we've got a nice loud signal from Chandrayaan-3. And what we have down here is the waterfall display. So this is what's happened, what's happening right now up here where I've got the pointer. That's the time, frequency, and the date. And as I scroll down, you'll see the date and time are ticking backwards. So this is what's happened in the past over the last 10 minutes. I've got it set up for a 10-minute scroll, as you can see in the time span over here. And then the frame rate up here updates 25 times a second. Might be a little bit slowed down by the FFT size I'm doing, but this is a good one here. It gives you a nice clear signal that everybody can see. So more questions about Luna 25. Really don't have much more to say about it. We don't have any information to confirm about what the Russians are doing or not doing, because they're not really telling us much other than there's some sort of spacecraft emergency. Okay, here just a quick look at Chanadrayaan-3. As you can see, it's doing its thing. Keep the screen up on what we're interested in here. I think I'm going to change the receiver a little bit too, so I can do less adjustments. So I'm going to change to upper sideband. So you get a wider filter. So a little bit more noise, but it should be a little bit better. Somebody asked me what time it is now. It's 1:15 p.m. local time. Somebody asks, do you use headphones? When doing weak signal radio work, you always use headphones. That's my standard practice. Seeing some kind of weirdness in the Doppler there. Not sure how long this burn is supposed to go and how exact the timing is. So I should probably get a Doppler plot up here. Okay, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes here, guys and gals. I'm going to get this Doppler data starting to be reduced a bit so I can analyze it while you guys are watching. So I won't be looking at comments for a few minutes. So essentially what I'm doing right now, which you can't see, is just setting up a fast Fourier transfer program to take the raw IQ data that I'm collecting and pump that into a format where I can get a sample every second. So we can see some pretty good resolution that way. And then I can also tabulate that data later for further study. Okay, just running the numbers now. Okay, so from the Doppler data, I can immediately tell that the spacecraft is in lock. Most likely, this stage of the game, it might be in lock with Canterbury. Madrid. I can tell that because of the wobbliness in the Doppler. This is the ramp Doppler that the DSN uses. So that gives us an indication. From when last I saw, DSN now is not working today. Seems to be common, unfortunately. So we'll set up for getting a periodic review of the Doppler data. And this was the last Doppler reversal, which occurred about 1945, just before I started the live stream. And we should be getting another plot here in a second. And that is so there was that little tick that I noted earlier. So that looks highly suspicious, like there's, not in a negative way, but that there was some sort of a change in spacecraft velocity with respect to us. So what you're about to hear, I believe, is it's a low Earth orbiting satellite passing through the field of view. So it's nothing to do with Chanadrayaan-3 lander, nor is it harmful to the spacecraft. This is just normal activity on S-band. So back to what we were discussing here. So here we have some sort of anomaly. So it could be the spacecraft changing orientation. So it looks like it occurred. Let's see if we can get a time on this. See if I can find it again. Okay, so somewhere around 2013 UTC, there was some sort of blip. This could have been an attitude change, maybe firing their thrusters to reorientate the spacecraft, and moving it one way and then compensating for it and then compensating again. So who knows? Interesting nonetheless. Okay. But it's interesting when you can study things in really high resolution like this. You might not even hear it because it's so subtle. But you can come back and look at the data later and see a great amount of detail. I think what I'm going to do is zoom the plot into there. There. Maybe we'll increase the gain here. Unfortunately, a PG plot is not the best for presenting data in kind of a live, exciting television kind of way, but it works. So we're approaching another Doppler reversal, and it looks like there's our little blip there. Yeah, so 25 kilometers above the moon is just above where you can start to get in trouble with lunar obstacles, i.e. mountains and other tall thingies on the moon that spacecraft shouldn't run into unless you're aiming for them. So yeah, once they get it there, they'll have this nice low paraloon, and so then they'll just do the last little bit of the of waiting for the orbital plane to line up with the landing site, and the moon rotates quite slowly, so that's why we're waiting quite a while. If, for example, you were over top of the Earth rotates pretty fast, once a day, where the moon rotates every 27 days. So you can get kind of an idea of what we're waiting for. So, from what I understand of these burns, they tend to be kind of targeted around, and they go on for many minutes. So we're pretty close now. We're like 3 or 4 minutes out. I would expect that we could be seeing something at any moment. We're also approaching a Doppler turnaround. As you've probably noticed, we're not seeing the spacecraft disappear behind the moon. So the orbital plane of the whole Chanadrayaan family is actually face on to the Earth right now. So if you could visualize the moon, I know it's hard to do because the moon is in the glare of the sun right now, but if you could see it, and the orbits of the 3 Chandrayaan spacecraft that are presently actively orbiting in this plane, that plane of that orbit is completely visible. It would be going around the outside of the moon, all approximately 100 kilometers above it. Obviously, the lander has a little bit of a lower dip into it, but That's how we would see it if we could. And it looks like there's some sort of a little bit of a change here that's occurred. So let's get our latest Doppler plot so we can get a bit more study of what's going on. Not 100% sure what to make of it yet. It could be just because of the ground lock nature of the signal. So we'll just have to stand by. So I see some of the, I guess ISRO must have made a statement. So maybe that was the burn that we saw here. So let's have a look. I haven't been looking at Twitter. Okay. Now they haven't provided an exact time of the burn, but I would suspect that was our burn. So their timing was approximate. So it occurred around, actually, we can get precise timings if you give me a second. And this is when it apparently stopped. So what I was doing there is taking a sample from the data. So this gives me the mean Julian time of the start of the burn and the frequency, signal intensity at that time, and this is the end of the burn. So we'll run the mean Julian time. And the start of the burn, oops. Start of the burn was 2015-45. And the end of the burn, I'm just going to throw that into the chat here just so we have a reference. And we'll grab the other guy and convert that into a human readable time. And the end of the burn was 2016-15. So it looked like a very short burn, or at least what we could detect. And where, oh where? End of burn. Okay, so now we should start to see a pretty distinctly different looking Doppler curve as the day plays out. So we'll continue to collect data. And as you can see here, we've got our burn documented in the Doppler. It was a bit earlier than the ISRO had announced yesterday. Not sure why. Maybe they're just giving general timings. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe they're not expecting people to actually watch it. In Indian time, yeah, you guys can use Google as well as I can. I report everything in UTC, otherwise things get confusing. I don't really even think in my local time zone anymore. Okay, so it's been kind of an interesting day with the reported events of Lunar 25 and possible implications for the Russian landing attempt on the moon, and of course the Chanadrayaan-3 performing its final orbital adjustment and preparing itself for landing. It's pretty cool seeing what we're seeing here. It's also nice to have a spacecraft that you can study and confirm statements from the space program that's operating it. So I'd like to thank the ISRO for publicly sharing information, not only on their social media accounts and their website, but also with JPL Horizons, and keeping the radio transmitters on board operational so people like myself all over the world can monitor the progress of the mission in real time. So with that, I think I'll wrap up the live stream. In a couple minutes, we'll just let the Doppler play out in the background, and then we'll wrap this up. Yeah, before I drop off, here's the ISRO tweeting about the burn. So there's the timing. So it all seems to line up. So things look like they've successfully occurred. And we got to see a nice Doppler anomaly that corresponds to the event. So with that, we await the lunar descent. Thanks for watching, everyone. And unfortunately, just to clarify, I will not be able to see the lunar descent. It will occur while the moon is high over India. So, and I'm on the opposite side of the planet, unfortunately. Fortunately, I would imagine the ISRO will have a nice live broadcast, and we'll be able to get all the details we could possibly want from them. Hopefully this time we'll showing a few less dignitaries and a little bit more spacecraft action. Anyways, have a great day, guys, and thanks for watching, and I'll say goodbye for now.